Hey, party people! Welcome once again to the Party of One podcast, where the gaming table is always set for two. I am your host, as always, Jeff Stormer. This week, I am joined by Russell Collins for the final installment of our ongoing Project Wingspan playtest. An episode which I have affectionately titled Project Wingspan War's End. I'm pretty excited about this, if you can't tell. Briefly, before we dive in, a special Patreon thank you to our newest backer, Russell. Thanks, Russell. That really means a lot. If you'd like to help support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/partyofonepodcast. And now, without any further ado, let's throw it over to me in the past, so he can get started with the end of things. Take it, past me. Thanks, future me. This week I'm sitting down once again with Russell Collins. Russell, thank you so much for coming back on Party of One.
Oh, it's always fun.
So, previously on the Project Wingspan saga, we had an eventful episode. Operation Backstab was a tremendous success. Operation Hammerfall was a tremendous success. We really we hammered into their defenses. The mission was nothing short of triumphant.
Oh, definitely.
And also triumphant was the war on the home front. I'm coming out of our previous session with a full seven joy. I've wiped what pain away, and Klaus is feeling pretty good. He had an emotional moment with Hannah. They have taken in Gene Wassler's daughter Maria. Things have been going very well. He stood up to Prior Paul Dumont, and they had quite the showdown. And
definitely.
I expect things will continue to come to a head this time. And he was called into action, feeling for the first time pretty excited and pretty hopeful for the future, and pretty hopeful in his ability to be human after Project Wingspan.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Because, the world is still kind of an angry place. You were able to get into that showdown with Paul Dumont and get Gene away from him before he could form a lynch mob or whatever. But remember, this guy also was able to get the peace movement people to, to pack it in and leave his town. So, yeah, it's still a little dicey out there. I don't want to, pour too much rain over the parade. But, yeah. But you're looking good as far as mood and power and, and all that. So, yeah, why don't we get into this new operation, Operation Portcullis.
Operation Portcullis.
All right. So, Berza has shipped you out and brought you out to transport vehicle, which you board and starts rumbling down the roads, driving over the hillside and down through the valleys. Normally they helicopter you out to places. You're kind of wondering what this is all about. Like, is this some sort of cutback or something like that? But it seems like a long ride. Berza is along for most of it. He's flipping through newspapers and starts sharing them with you and going down to different columns of this, that, the other thing. Eventually, even he seems a little annoyed by how long the transport's going to take, so he starts shouting to the driver about what's the holdup here, what's going on, and the driver replies to him saying that well, we've had some new orders, so we have to delay the operation by a few hours. It was decided we didn't need to helicopter you out because of that, so it'll just be a while. And they keep on rolling along. Most of the day passes in that fashion, with Berza getting progressively more and more irritated by this treatment, until finally you arrive at one of the military airfields, where there are a bunch of people sort of lackadaisically greeting you, bringing you along and all that, and as they move you over to one of the helicopters to fly you out to wherever it is you're really intended to be going, you can sort of pick up there's this air around there, this sort of relaxed air, and then you see the most recent transmissions have started to come through and circulate, and handbills are passing out that it's believed that Asturia is on the verge of agreeing to an armistice.
Oh,
yeah. Wow. So people are starting to get a little relaxed. It's like,
that's
okay.
Incredible. That's unbelievable. Dang. It's almost unnerving the way that they're treating me right now. It's almost unnerving to not be sort of the center of attention, the sort of hushed, lab experiment. To be treated sort of this lackadaisical feel is maybe more unnerving than the cloak and dagger stuff that I've been kind of surrounded with in the past. I had started to get used to that, and now there's a little bit more energy around, and I'm not entirely. It's sort of, for as good as I was feeling coming into this, and for as joyous as I was, and for all the energy that I felt back home in Idle, now I'm a little bit on edge. It sort of started to eat at me just a little bit.
It's been a long time since those, your days back as a young recruit, when hurry up and wait was the mantra. So now it is a little, as you say, it's different. They do eventually get you loaded onto the helicopter and flown out to a scrapyard. From what you can piece together, you are heading toward the Hansen front, and you haven't had to pay a lot of attention to the Hansen forces in a long time. It might be because the Asturians are sort of on the verge of this armistice that that they're no longer a threat. The last time you had to contend with the Hansens was when they began trying to push in from the southern ports, and you had to deal with their lander craft and all of their battleships and so on out on the bay. So you haven't really had much direct conflict with them since then. It's kind of interesting to hear how the war has shifted. I mean, once you do arrive at the airfield, there's at the scrapyard, there is the usual, regular air of tension, and nervousness, and it's sort of aggressive energy, as they begin prepping you for launch, and they give you the little earpiece to plug in so you can hear, some commands coming in, and the voice that you hear, you immediately recognize from the transistor broadcasts, that kind of thing. It's General Fontaine.
Okay.
Speaking directly to the command team of this operation. This is perhaps the fight that will lead to the end of this conflict. So I want you all to know that I am personally overseeing this operation, and I'm, hoping for all of you to do your best in the service of your nation. After he finishes his quick address, they then begin to give you the lowdown of the operation. So what's happening is the Hansens are making a sort of a desperate push. Originally, when the Hansen military declared their war against Moravia, there were some towns in the mountainside that broke away. They kind of defected to the Hansen side because these were places that had been historically Hansen, but were sort of taken over by Moravia in the previous war. They were absorbed into the Moravian nation, but had been ethnically Hansen. And so when the when the Hansens wanted to advance in, these towns gave themselves over to that. Now, since that time, those towns have been retaken, pushing the Hansens out of the mountain ranges. But now, in this sort of desperation act, they're trying to reclaim that land, because those are still good, strong, strategic places. If they can get themselves up into those hills, then maybe they can form, back up a kind of fighting force that they could take towards some of the larger cities of Moravia. So, rather than allow that risk, they're going to be dispatching you to deal with this push in Operation Portcullis. As the general explains it, this is the chance to shut them down, to slam the gates down, and prevent any future advance by them. We'll bottle them up here, send them packing, and the war will be over.
Best case scenario, if succeeding here can end it, then let's end it.
Okay. So, they give you your activation injector. They all stand back away from you as you dose yourself and begin your transformation into the machine. So, you've still got a machine rating of 4, so we're going to pick 4 upgrades to tick off.
We are going to go with fit and focused.
Okay.
And I think intellectual and strong.
Intellectual and strong. Okay.
Actually, I'm going to go with observant and strong.
Observant and strong.
Yeah.
Okay. This is all, the sort of the more direct combat approach.
I think that, because I think what happens as I change this time is I am markedly more aggressive looking than I've ever looked before. If this is the chance to end it, then I come out it
almost immediately the shoulder cannon that we've seen a few times before comes, but it's like bigger and it like looks like it should be weighing down my shoulder a little bit, and maybe it does for a moment, and it takes me kind of a half a second to even I'm surprised at like the weight that's suddenly there. And I've got the Hellboy gloves of doom back on.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And like it is, my wings are the wings of a bomber jet with like tiny missiles underneath. I am every bit a walking artillery station. I'm picturing the actual armor parts almost Warhammer 40k like Space Marine, where it's just bulky for almost just the sake of bulk, and I'm like, let's end this.
Okay. Yeah, you launch into the air, scattering chunks of debris behind you, and sail off toward the front. Now, the battle,
and it's probably it's not a visual note. Is it's not. Previously there have been maybe 2 jets or jets under the wings. I'm picturing one like Rocketeer style, just one massive bomb-looking jet that just boom, and like sends me soaring into the sky, knocking things left, right, and center.
Nice. Okay. So the battlefield you're heading toward is sort of a mountain pass. It's formerly one of the major throughways into and out of Morovia. Control over this space has passed back and forth, so there are all kinds of crushed barricades on either side, and a lot of the pavement has been destroyed and ripped up over time, but there's still, this broad expanse of open, flat land there that, between some mountainsides that have been sheared away to create that open space there. The enemy forces consist of an armor column, sort of the remaining tanks of the Hansen forces, but they're also being escorted by some advancing aircraft, which include bombers that could do some serious damage to the pillboxes and defensive structures that are up in the hills on the Moravian side. They have their own armor columns and so on, but they're setting up behind barricades to try and just hold people at bay there, throw their shells across the border toward the advancing troops to hold the line, as General Fontaine has described it. So the first concerns to you are, well, let's see. So there's the advancing aircraft, the bombers, but then there is also the armor column moving in. Your 2 missions basically are to deal with that aircraft and also to repel the tanks, to neutralize their advance. The power level, I've set at 50 for this battle, so that's your starting energy to get you through this. Remember, every time you roll dice, that's going to tick away a little bit of the power. Enemies' difficulty numbers are based on their own number. It's modified by the general mood of the world, but then also by buffs, which are extra abilities that they have. You can counteract those buffs by bringing in sort of a side action with an additional skill that will let you debuff in order to chip away at those extras that they have. So where is your first objective? Which mission do you want to look toward first?
I think if I'm in the air, then I've got to take out the aircraft. It is just going to be a straightforward, I think I see the aircraft and I am just unwavering, just one long straight line as I move in on these aircraft until I'm kind of within machine gun distance, and then I start ducking and weaving.
Okay.
And there's almost a stillness. There's a stillness before I meet with the bombers where I breathe and my head sinks and the machine, and I feel that kind of bump as the machine takes over, and I'm like, no, okay, let's take care of this one last time.
I have to say that sort of joyous feeling that you've had has become sort of a warm, pleasant sensation since you've transformed, because you are basically giving the machine what it wants, so there's no internal struggle, there's no fight over this, there's just this comfort with what's coming.
Yeah.
So as you approach on the bombers, they're flying a little slow, you notice. And you realize it's because they have some smaller helicopters that are providing them with a bit of cover. And as you come close, those helicopters peel away from the bombers and move to intercept you. They're not the fast flyers that the bombers could be. But as they peel away to come towards you, you see the bombers start to pick up speed and head more directly towards their targets. So they've seen you, and they want to deal with you as quick as they can. So, you could go for the helicopters. You could try and blaze past them and just head straight for the bombers. The choice is yours.
I think I'm going to dispatch the helicopters first and then move in on the bombers. I don't want them. I don't want them still flying around because if they're not protecting the bombers, they can protect the tanks. They are going to make my job as difficult as possible. So I think the bomber wings, like the missiles underneath, detach and just start like hurtling towards them in every single direction.
Okay. So the difficulty that you're dealing with the helicopters, they are a lighter aircraft vehicle, but because of the advantages that they have, the difficulty to deal with them is actually a 10. They're very fast, very light, maneuverable, smaller vehicles. But if you can sort of counteract their fast speed, you can debuff that and it'll knock them down to a 7. It sounds to me like the action you're trying to take is observant, because you're firing missiles on people, right? Does that sound right? Okay, so that's focused observant. If you want to try and pull in a side action, then you can, debuff that, reduce the difficulty, but it'll cost you more power to do it.
I think I'm just gonna punch through it straight. I feel like the missiles themselves should dispatch them without necessarily a lot of extra. I think I'm almost distracted. I think it's not even necessarily so much that I'm consciously like weighing pros and cons, and I'm just like, get out of here, leave me alone. This is not the time.
All right,
so we're looking at 5 dice.
Yeah, your focused pool, yes, is 5 dice,
and I'm gonna add 5 to that for my observant.
Okay. High roll is
3. I got 3 3s.
Oh yeah, 3 3. So that's a
5
5.
Plus 5 is 10.
10.
Perfect.
Right on target. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, the scatter of missiles, they seems random at first, almost in a way. There's just a cloud of rockets flying out in all directions from you. But then they each steer, they each pick out a target, and they converge perfectly to smack each of the helicopters out of the sky. Chunks of broken metal and flaming debris rain down from where they just swat each one down. It's just you and the bombers now.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't even think I'm watching the missiles as they converge. I think it is just. It's like you said. There's a serenity where it's just second nature, and I'm like, of course, missiles dropped. Of course, they've dispatched the helicopters. Yep. My mission is the bombers.
Well, I'd like to also point out that only cost you 3 energy because the high roll was a 3. So it was a very efficient way to get that done.
I let the machine do its job.
Yep, and it's quite happy. The bomber's going to be a little trickier. They've actually begun to spray clouds of smoke that sort of form a bit of a smoke screen in the air around them and below them. It doesn't really help us sort of like they're the head of that, but it's also a way to disguise the fact that they're machine gunners, on the little machine gun nests or machine gun turrets all along the sides of the bombers are there to try and intercept you. So they're more difficult to deal with. They're 8. They are 12 difficulty right now because of their 2 buffs from the smoke and the machine guns.
So I think what happens is they let out the smoke screen, and I'm still just, dead focused, and from behind my ears, visors kind of like form around my eyes, and my eyes get and I start seeing the outlines of not even so much the bombers, I think. I see the thermal outlines of the people on the bombers as I'm locking on with them, Predator style. And I'm, focusing in on them. I see them turn the machine guns on me, and I I kind of like just lean. I trust the machine.
Mm-hmm.
I fall back a bit, and it carries me in between the different bombers, so that the machine guns end up opening fire on each other.
Ooh, wow. Okay.
Akbar slash.
So what do we? Let's see. So in a way, we're trying to outmaneuver them, huh?
Yeah, and I think the thing that's the end goal is just to straight punch through the is to get in close and just punch through them.
Okay.
Dismantle them by hand.
So are you trying to debuff the smoke with the visor, or debuff the machine guns by putting yourself where they would end up hitting each other, and then make your just straight up smash?
Yeah. I think I'm trying to observant away the smoke screens,
right,
and then deft away the machine gunners, so I can just leave one big walloping punch as I start to tear through them by hand.
Yeah, well, that sounds good to me. I mean, yeah, you're basically able to strip the difficulty down to 7 by doing that, by counteracting both effects. So now it's just up to strong. Now it's just smashing your way through the armored skin of the bombers.
And that is again 5 dice plus 5.
Okay.
That is a 6. So 5. 6 plus 5 is 11. Do I want to spend 4 joy to buy this down to a 7? I think I'm going to.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna buy that down to a pass.
Okay, it's a big spend, but go ahead. Yeah. Okay, you bought it down to a pass. So you've. I think what you've done here is basically you've started to smash and tear up one of the bombers, and then you realize that at the range they're at, and your career of aircraft piloting, their bombs are probably armed by now because they're getting ready to deploy. If you start smashing through into the into the actual bomb storage, all of the payloads are going to go off. So instead, you smash up the engines, and the bomber starts to lose height. And then you grab and tear at one of the wings, and it loses its ability to steer and starts to drift off to one side. At which point it crashes against the other bomber, forcing it in the same direction. So the two of them are now, slowly descending on failing engines off to away from you, like to the left of the battlefield, just drifting down, unable to pull away from it. And you see crewmen start grabbing parachutes and leaping out of the hatchway.
And I think as I'm exiting, I grab. I see them scrambling for their parachutes, and I initially just look at them and I'm about to fly off, but then that voice in my head's like, it's over. It could be over. This could be it. And so I end up reaching up and tearing half of one of the walls of the plane, and basically open air, exposing it as they're scrambling for parachutes. So as I fly off, there's just this large empty space for them to leap out with their parachutes. And I fly off, and I'm like, did I need to do that? Yes, you are not. I am not the machine. I will not be the machine after. It doesn't matter. And I fly off.
Okay. Interesting. Because that would have played in toward your hope, I think, but you didn't win.
Yeah.
You matched. So
yeah.
So that stays where it is. It's spent. That's okay. I mean, the alternative was, doing some more nasty damage.
Yeah.
But some nasty damage does happen to a hillside, which thankfully doesn't seem to have anybody on it, because as you turn back around to the tanks, the bombers do touch down, and yeah, the primed bombs in the one do all go off in this tremendous just ripple of thunder. As bomb after bomb after bomb just triggers in quick succession, and chunks of plane come flying into the air. Your eyes sort of darken out the explosions just for a fraction of a second automatically, so the machine makes sure you aren't blinded by that kind of thing. But then there's just this wash of heat from those explosions that surges across the battlefield that you can pick up on with sort of a perfect minute clarity.
And I feel the equilibrium in my ears throw me back a little bit, and it's one of those moments where it's almost, when you get jolted out of a dream and you dream because you feel like you're falling. I get that where I feel like I'm going to get thrown back from the explosion, but the machine keeps me perfectly, feet planted. And I'm like, oh, this has never stopped being weird. Never, ever has this stopped being weird.
Now, interesting contrast. After the previous action only costing you 3, this one cost you about the maximum that can cost. That was 11 points of power to pull off all of that stuff of, conjuring the visor, deftly maneuvering yourself with, perfect control, and then, physically punching down to 2 bombers. So, just so you know is where we are with that. We're not at the halfway mark yet, but that was a costly bit of work.
Worth it.
Yep. So the armor column of the enemy. This is a little more complicated to deal with. There are different squads of tanks of varying degrees of rating and also repair from what you can see down below. It looks like some of these things have... A couple of them look fresh off the assembly line and others look like they've been, stuck back together with tape and baling wire. They're basically pouring everything that they have into this column here. The lighter tanks are mostly all-terrain vehicles that are running by the sides of the road, but going up the center are a group of medium tanks. But at the front of them is an Asturian tank. It's an Asturian crawler, which is a big, long, low-to-the-ground machine. It's about the size of 4 of these main battle tanks. But this thing is plowing through barricades. It has this gigantic, ram, well, kind of like the wedge at the front of a huge snowplow or a train that is just knocking aside the barricade materials, and shredding up the pavement in front of it. But it doesn't seem to matter at all. The back of it is covered in just rows and rows of armor plates, and shots from the Moravian side are smacking against it, banging off of it, and it looks like most of that is just really denting this thing. And the other heavy tanks are following behind it and launching their shells over the back of this thing that is kind of like their battering ram cruising up the street into the pass. So what I think I've presented to you what is probably the most attractive, but also the most difficult target.
It is. I think I stand there for a second, and the machine presents me with a number of tactically viable options. It's like, well, if we merely if we target it so that we can knock it off balance, it'll fall. We can tip it over, or we can do this. We can just shoot through it. We can try to take out the people inside. And I stand there for a moment, and I look at my hands, and I'm like, if this is the last time that I get to be the super soldier, I'm gonna have a little fun with it. And I run, and jet boots fire as I fly into the air, and I just try to meet it head on with one big calamitous punch right in the cattle pusher.
Okay. Now that is probably the heaviest of its titanium reinforced plating, which gives it a buff there. It does also have some point defense weapons, so as you're coming towards it, there are little turrets that open up and begin, spraying gunfire at you. Also, though, this seems to be the lead vehicle, and similar to as you saw the commander of the Asturians had his sort of personal family insignia painted on the side of it. As you get closer, you can see there is an insignia on this one as well. It must be some important Hansen family, because the crest has that sort of green and black design that's on the Hansen flag with with this sort of gold crown shape. So that shows that this is some important member of their military or someone from one of their aristocratic families is piloting this one. So that means this thing gets a total of 3 buffs. So that means it's got 6 buffs on top of its 8 difficulty. This is 14. This thing is the high end of what they have to offer. I mean, this is, as exciting as those huge weapon platforms were on the Asturian side, this seems to be the best the Hansens have been able to cook up to match that. They've taken this Asturian crawler and they have heavily converted it into being their ultimate weapon.
So I think what happens is I take the jump, and from the first thing that happens is from the wings, those missiles have replaced themselves with sort of magnetic, like crawler missiles, basically. They and my wings sort of, I feel them shift, and like my shoulder blades pull me back before I rear up for the punch. And I feel my wings sort of turn into just large platforms with dozens of these little like metal balls on them, and they all fire off at once, land, sprout spider legs, and start crawling around to try to attach themselves to the turrets. The second thing that happens is that big shoulder cannon that forms, the big artillery cannon.
Yep.
Opens up a little bit and changes into and sort of like opens up and expands and becomes that big sonic cannon again. So that as I'm coming down for a punch, I just let out one, it fires off this horrific boom that like to try and knock off all of the support, like the support tanks, keep them off balance as I'm coming in to just punch through this metal plating. I will not try to debuff the metal plating. I kind of want to prove that I kind of want to live this moment as the big mighty super soldier that I am. I want this one big hero moment.
Good. Well, yeah, that sound will basically deafen the crew to the point that they're not going to be able to do nearly as much to help you. And yes, the scatter mines crawl around and begin dismantling, and with the point defense guns with their small clusters of explosions. Meaning, it's just up to you, the gigantic fist, surging toward the plow blade, which now has a challenge of 11.
All right, and that's going to be fit plus strong, so that's 5 dice plus 5.
Yep.
That is 2 5s, which is an 11.
Oh, dead on again.
Dead on. I know. I've learned
clean.
I've learned my capabilities, especially after last time when I went over dramatically. I've learned which buffs to keep and which ones to let stand.
Gotcha. Yes. So yeah, as I said, just cleanly, you hit the thing right at the center of that plow, and for a second you feel the whole tank that you're pushing against just like slow, almost as if it's hit something solid, and then there's this weird metallic shrieking sound as your fist begins to punch through that plow. It bends and curves and snaps into 2 halves as you finish the punch in sort of an uppercut that tears off the front plating of the tank and actually rips away the hydraulics that were holding that thing in place there. Those 2 chunks then fall to either side of the tank, which means they fall under its own treads, which ramps it up slightly into the air before it tips over to one side and slams onto the pavement with its treads just spinning madly on one side, kicking up huge chunks of pavement. This gigantic, oversized machine on the verge of toppling as the crew, the deafened crew, scramble trying to figure out how to regain control of this monster that they've that they've lost the reins to steer. And the tank columns behind just start slamming on their brakes as well and screeching to try and get out of the way of this this thing that has basically become a roadblock to them now. And the other lighter tanks nimbly get around it and try to continue their push, but they've lost the big gun. So that was, let's see.
That was 5 with 2 debuffs.
2 debuffs, so that's 8 power for that, which takes us down to 28. And that's going to be the punching the tank. Taking better notes of what happens with each action now so I can get the play-by-play when I do my notes on review. Okay, cool. So there we have it. So we're still not even at half power. That's the crawler dealt with. The light tanks are still trying to do their thing. The medium tanks are trying to regain control over this whole thing. But already on the Moravian side, you're hearing cheers going up that are even being picked up over the communications links and all that. They open up another, tremendous volley of fire that shoots over your head and begins to smash down on that rear column of tanks. Now that they are stalled out, trying to figure out how to get away, they're in perfect range to be hit. But the lighter ones are still trying to push their way through.
All right. I think what happens is I've got these two big flat wings that are now empty because all of the spider mines have deployed. And I'm standing there and I'm struggling to stand because it's like, even with the machine, like it is an unwieldy feeling. And suddenly like my body feels pulled to the left and then jerked back to the right. And it happens two or three more times and I try to get a look and I can't quite see over my shoulders. And then I see one of them over my shoulders, and I'm like, oh no. And those big flat panels, along with the sonic cannon, have just turned into, I'm gonna say 6. We'll say 8. I think go full weird spider with it.
Yeah.
Of 8 like smaller turret cannons that I'm just like, okay, and they start to like focus in to just start like popping shots at light tanks.
Okay.
One after another, and I'm kind of just standing there as they kind of like jerk me in one direction and another.
Okay. The challenge to just hit these things head on is a 10. Because they have their all-terrain, wheels that let them move off the rough pavement. And they also have cannons armed with flechette rounds, which, they turn to you and try to hammer at you with that. I mean, their aim doesn't have to be nearly as good in order to hit you with these basically shotgun clusters of tank fire. So it's a straight up 10 to hit them head on. If you want to try and debuff one or two of those options, you can loop in another skill.
I think I'm gonna go for the 10. I think I'm just gonna stand there and let the machine pop shots. That feels like the right thing.
Okay, so that's an observant action.
Yep, focused and observant. That's 5 dice plus 5. That is a high roll of 4, so that makes 9, and then I'll spend that last joy to tie that at 10.
Okay. Cannons light off one after the other, just in this sort of like coordinated volley. And each shell spins down and smashes into one of these smaller tanks, punching holes in them, causing them to spin out and crash off the road, tipping over to one side. As the volley ends, you see one last tank speeding up the hill away from you, just at a dead tilt, until the machine just shifts its weight slightly, and a last shell fires out of one of the guns and just squarely smacks down on the top of the turret of this one tank, and it stops as if someone has stepped down on it from above. It stops dead where it is and starts to smoke and smolder. That is the end of the light tanks. So far, so good. We've got a few things left in this, though, because there are still some of those medium tanks that are managed to pull themselves back together. A couple of them have basically just piled up because of having to stop, behind the crawler. But a few of the others are still trying to mount some sort of resistance, and they're trying to focus their efforts on you. They're wheeling around, trying to get their cannons pointed toward you. The first few shots go wide from you, but they're using new high explosive rounds, so they immediately light off all of the the pavement behind you and smash down a few more of these barricades there. You can hear some Moravian transmissions about calling for the soldiers to get away, and you notice that some of the troops who had started to advance out of the barricade areas to try and do some cleanup are now being chased back away by the fire from these tanks.
I think the first shell hits, and I am sent tumbling off in the air. And there's a burst of smoke, and then I push through the smoke. My wings have sort of returned into not necessarily bomber wings, just long, sleek, the kind of jet wings that I'm familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire thing, the entire battle suit has sort of taken on a slightly sleeker tone as I've been knocked out. I've been knocked out of, like, the conscious mindset of, like, I am going to be the machine to end the war, and I'm a little bit more in my comfort zone.
Right.
So the machine's a little bit thinner and a little bit sleeker. The wings are a little bit smoother in design, and I'm just a little more mobile as I look at my hand, and it's like like fingers extended, and it just sort of like a buzzsaw kind of forms around it. Mm-hmm. And I look at the other hand, and the same thing is happening. And I'm like, all right. And I sort of, like, take off towards the medium tanks, like, hands kind of extended, prepared to basically, like, slice them open, exposing the troops within to give them the opportunity to flee.
Okay. Now, these have a difficulty of 12. Because they've got their heavy armor. I mean, so far you haven't invented anything to deal with heavy armor other than just you just had to just punch straight through it. And they do also have these advanced high explosive rounds, which is adding an extra 5 to their 7 basic difficulties. So I don't know if you want to try, if you just want to like hit the 12, or if you want to try and debuff anything off that.
I think we'll try to debuff one of those. I think that let's see. I think that the oh, I know what it is. I think the high explosive rounds, I am kind of, like, I see one of them coming and I remember what has just happened, and instinctively the shoulder cannon, like, starts to take aim and, like, shoot laser beam fire to, like, dismantle the explosives in the air.
Nice.
So they're safely exploding away from me and away from anyone else. And it's just like, bam! 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 And I'm like, okay, fine, this works. And I've still got my arms crossed across my chest, prepared to, like, double hand chop my way through the top. Like, cut these things open like a can opener, basically.
Okay.
So I'm going to debuff one of them and leave the other one standing.
Okay. So, 2... All right. Yeah, go ahead and make your roll for that.
All right. That's 5 dice plus 5.
Yep.
That is a 5. So that is a 10 total.
10, okay. And by debuffing those 2, you bring us down to, once again, a nice, clean, even matching 10. Right? It was 12?
It was 12. Yeah, it was 12. We took off one of the
took away 2 points. Yes. Okay, cool. So a nice, even, matching 10. So let's take 7 out of that, which puts us at 16. All right. Yeah, just as advertised, as you intend. Your each action here has been like clean and precise and perfect. Like this almost elegant approach to the destruction. As every shell they launch, you just knock down, or cause to explode in the sky with this like surge of heat. And then, the saw blades just slice neatly through the sides of the tanks, disabling them one after the other, after the other, after the other.
And for the first time, it feels like we are, like, the machine and I are in perfect unison, which there's a certain cruel irony in that it is hopefully the last time that they will get that we work together. Mm-hmm. We finally it finally feels like we are just like one and the same. Like, I'm no longer telling the machine to do things. It's just instinctive, and I am not, like, my body isn't quite reacting as though something is being done. It's just, it feels it's like you said, it feels like there's harmony, and it feels almost like a dance, right? It just feels like, okay, this is the next thing that is going to happen.
Great. Once again, another cheer comes across communications and soldiers, up in the dugouts, and and from the back line, just explode with this excitement at seeing how you dispatch the armor column. Excellently done, says General Fontaine over the communications. I think we've just about completed our operations here. I'm going to... What's that? Priority communications from military council. Yes. I'm handing over control of this operation to General Delaney by order of the High Military Council. General Delaney. Thank you. You hear General Delaney's voice immediately pick up from there. Soldiers of Morovia, you have served us excellently, and this is our final opportunity to remove the Hansen threat to our borders once and for all. I order a complete advance on the retreating Hansen forces. We must stake our claim on Hansen land. We must assure that they do not come to our borders again. Commanders, you have your orders. There's a click and sort of a switching sound in your head. It sort of tells you that a different channel has been dialed in for you. Rocket Man, I need you to lead the advance of this assault. Our soldiers will follow you anywhere, and so I need you to pursue Commander Leonardi. He's attempting to escape in one of the light vehicles. He'll have a personal guard with him, of course, and he's going to try and move through the retreating infantry. Take out whatever you have to in order to get to him. Is that understood?
Call them off.
I'm sorry?
Call them off. I can get them myself. This does not need to be an invasion. If our target is one person, I showed you last time. I can get one person. You put them on a tank, you put them directly, you put them anywhere on that front, I can get them. This does not need to be an invasion. This is an operation. Call them off.
This is an unfortunate act of insubordination.
Court-martial me after this. It's fine. Call them off.
All right. We'll humor you. But if there's any failure here, you should know where it will lead. I want to end this war just as much as anyone else, but you know we don't end wars by letting people walk away so that they can come back again. We have to break their spirits. We have to break their intent to fight us. So do that.
We take the leadership, cut off the head, and the rest falls.
I hope you're right.
I do too.
So as you turn around to focus your attention, you immediately can pick out Leonardi and his, his group of guardsmen. They're looking really the worst for wear, like battered, beaten up, and so on. I mean, they're scrambled to get into one of the remaining light tanks, and they're taking off down the road. As they're driving, other Hansen infantry and survivors and escapees from the crashed tanks are running and now scrambling to get out of their way as they just sort of barrel through their own retreating people, trying to get away first from all this. So it's another one of those tanks, but it is Commander Leonardi, and he has his personal guard along with him, so it's got some buffs from that. So let's see, the difficulty on this one is 13.
Okay. I think what happens is I take off flying, and I try to get above. And my plan is I look at my arm, and what is formed on my wrist is a rocket-guided grabber claw, basically. Like it is a claw, and it's got a module on the front with two little rockets so that I can kind of propel it. And they have sort of rotors on the side so that I can propel it and sort of hurtle it to the left or right if they take a hard turn. Basically, guided grapple claw, essentially. I know I'm going to have to punch through or cut through the tank.
Right.
So what happens is, on my other hand, the buzzsaw is still there. But two of these rockets sort of like form on the side, on the sides of my wrist. So I'm like, okay. So the plan is I'm going to shoot this through the roof. Then I'm going to fire the grappler, grab him from there.
Okay.
I hope that's enough. That's 2 buffs, which will drop us down to a 12, I believe.
What did I say? I said it was 13, actually. So 2 buffs drop us down by 5 from that. So that'll put it in an 8. Because it's already got the buffs of him being the commander and his personal guard, who are hanging on the sides of the tank to try and take shots at whoever's coming after them with their various weapons.
Okay, yeah, I'll go with it. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay,
I'll take it.
So an 8 then, and you are it sounds like since you're firing a thing, this is a focused observant.
That works for me.
Yeah, okay.
That works for me. 5 dice plus 5
against an 8.
That is 3, 4. That is 9. 9. So I'm going to spend that last point of joy, knock this down to an 8. And what happens is, I drop down along the side, and I see this. I see the forces behind me start to stop as the orders come in, and I'm like, cut off the head, and this without. This doesn't have to be an invasion. We don't have to be the enemy. And I throw the buzzsaw, and it slices clean off the roof. The roof goes flying, and I take aim, and the weirdest possible thing happens, which is my arm shakes as I take aim. And I fire, and it hovers for a second as the jet engines start to kick in, and it flies, and it just cleanly plucks him by the collar and just grabs him by the scruff of his neck, pulls him over, and I just hold him in front. I'm just holding him in front of me, and I'm just holding him for a moment, and I just utter, "Call him off."
There is a look of abject panic on Leonardi's face.
I've completely stopped flying at this point as I'm holding him just midair. Call them off.
Covered in dirt and and there's blood smeared on the side of his face. Probably not his. Probably someone else's. He's just trying to make words and not able to do it at all. "Excellently done," says General Delaney's voice through the communications. "All advancing soldiers hold position. Bring him in. Winberg, bring him in."
And I look him cold in the eyes as I pull him close, and I whisper, "You or all of them?" And I gesture behind me at the soldiers holding their forces. It was one or many. When you think about the invasion, think about the battles that didn't happen, and know that it was me. And I take off, and I fly back towards Delaney and towards Boza and towards everyone else, still holding him in hand.
Gotcha.
A gas mask, a pressure mask, kind of bursts from my chest, and I'm a little bit unnerved about that as it kind of plucks onto his face, and we take off flying.
Okay.
And I never once waver from holding him by the lapel of his jacket. As we fly.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we've completed Operation Portcullis.
I'd say so.
So, here's where, normally, we just sort of round up the actions. Let's see. We had one mission that had 2 actions in, so go ahead and roll 2 dice for that. See what the high die is.
5.
5, okay. That's 5 away from the resources of the enemy military. And then we had another mission that was 3 items. Go ahead and roll 3 dice for that.
4.
4, okay, so it's another 4. And then this last mission, we only completed 1 action in it, so I don't think we generally don't roll for missions where there's more than 1 action, because basically you got the crux of it. You didn't really carry out the full mission Delaney asked for, but still, that's 9 points of enemy removed from the enemy's resources, which, by my imaginary calculations, means that this is indeed the last battle. The Hansen and Asturian military have run out of resources. There's no materiel. There's no leadership. There's not enough left of their military energy to continue. They're going to be forced into an armistice. They're going to be forced to retreat, to sue for peace. All of this is on the near horizon for Klaus and Moravia.
We did it. We actually somehow did it. Wow. I don't even have words. I don't know what to feel at this moment. It has all been for this. Everything that put my body and my mind and my soul through has been for this, and part of me thought it was never going to get here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's here now, and that's too enormous to process.
Back at the scrapyard, your armor dismantles itself and falls apart. Hopefully for the last time, it just sort of like melts away into little bits and pieces. I mean, you can just sort of feel the little grains of sand dripping through the spaces between your fingertips as as the armored gloves collapse and fall apart. Boza and the technicians, get you all bundled up and back into your street clothes, and then they put you on board one of the helicopters that starts to fly you back home. Okay, so the trip back home goes speedier than the last one, of course, but
I don't even think I notice it, honestly. I think it kind of like I think I kind of blink and we're back in Idle, and I'm like, oh, cool, great.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Berza, driving the car, takes you right up to Hana's door, where you see there's another car already parked outside with some men in their dress military uniforms standing by. There's an air of military formality about them, and when they see you, they both straighten up. They don't seem to know if they're supposed to salute or not, which immediately says that they must know who you are or what's going on or something to that effect.
I kind of stiffen up for a moment as though I'm going to expect us to salute.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of my posture immediately softens and I give them this very almost flippant 2-finger salute. And I'm just like, fellas, how are we doing today?
Very good, sir. We've heard a lot of good news about the discussions of armistice. They're already the high command of Asturia is already in contact with Morovia, and they're hoping that feelers that have put out toward Hansa will lead them to do the same.
That's good to hear. That's what it's all been about. Mm-hmm. So.
The other one of these military guys gives a sly smile and says, by the way, you have a house guest waiting for you. Just thought you should know.
Oh, okay. Okay then. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything. We couldn't have done it all without you. And I take time and I shake each of their hands and I ask for each of their names.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They both seem kind of confused at this point. I mean, the you're welcome. I mean, I don't think we did all that much, but you're welcome. Yeah. Okay.
I wave them I smile as I kind of walk past them. I breathe deep and I walk inside and I look around and
Hana isn't there. The kitchen is bright and lit up. The back windows are open, so there's a kind of a cool breeze coming in and clearing out the air. And you see seated at the kitchen table is Maria. She's dressed in her bedclothes still, so maybe she had a rough morning this morning, and needed her medicine or whatever, so she just never got around to that. But seated across from her at the table is a tall, somewhat imposing woman, also wearing a military dress uniform. It is General Delaney. And the two of them are talking, just sort of in a pleasant little chat and so on. And when you come in, Delaney turns to you and gives you a quick, militaristic smile. Sorry, Hannah stepped out to get us some croissant. She realized that she'd run out.
That sounds like Hannah. Mm-hmm. General, how are we today?
Mr. Winberg, we are very well today. I wanted to personally congratulate you on your achievements. The Rocket Man has become a famous fixture of the Moravian military. This war is going to end very soon, and so much of that is because of the things that you've done. And that's why you're going to have to make some very hard decisions very soon, Mr. Winberg.
I understand.
The machine in you is a weapon.
Of course.
A Moravian weapon. Meaning, it's not the sort of thing that can be allowed to continue past this war unless it stays with you.
I understand.
If you decide to continue your service to the Moravian military, then you will retain access to the machine. She's just saying all this. Like, Maria doesn't really seem to pay too much attention to what's going on with this. I mean, she's coloring on some pages on the table. If you choose other, we will need to remove the machine from you. I've been told it's possible. I've also been told it's excruciating and may cause lasting damage. You're going to have to make that decision, not today, not immediately. There'll be some time. Things will need to wind down. We'll need to make sure there isn't a need for follow-up military action. But these are decisions you're going to have to make in the near future.
I understand. I will let you know. There is one discussion that I need to have about it, and I have a request related to that discussion, and it is a request that you could shoot down, that the military could shoot down, that anybody could shoot down, but I have exactly one request before I make this decision.
All right.
I want, and it doesn't have, in fact, it shouldn't be fully powered. I would like one last applicator.
You have a little personal mission of your own to carry out.
I have a personal mission that I'd like to carry out.
I can probably make arrangement for that. You've done a great service to this country, honestly. And that's really why I wanted to be here in person, to explain to you the gravity of the situation. I think I can allow for the requisition of one of the injectors. As you say, I won't be full power. It probably will only be something to last for a very short period before
that's
the
all
machine
I need.
Goes dormant again. All right. I'll see what arrangements I can make. It's not something I can do immediately, but I'll have that to you soon. Well, I'll take my leave then. Tell Hannah I'm sorry I couldn't wait for her to come back with the croissant. I'm sure they are lovely.
She will be heartbroken, but I trust she will understand.
Very good.
She'll understand in time.
Thanks again, Rocket Man.
Never call me that again.
So as she leaves, you can see Maria is scribbling away on various pieces of paper on the table. One of them that's sitting at the top actually catches your eye. It's one of the rapid printout news reports. A lot of the newspapers have taken to delivering, by using transistor broadcasts. They've been putting out these little one sheets of the most immediate news, stuff that's just happened, up to the minute kind of things. And this one, in big, letters, is typed out "Victory" across the top. The text isn't that great. It's, printed out with these little tiny dots instead of the full pressed, letters like you have on a real newspaper. So, the writing there is a little rough. But one of the things they always try to do is include a picture that sort of, explains things to people about what's going on. So, in the dots you can see that a Hansen military turn back, the, dramatic actions of our forces, being led by the Rocket Man, and our victorious actions. Below that, the little dot matrix image It isn't of you, unfortunately. It seems to be of a group of soldiers sort of celebrating the victory of the battle. And it's actually a collection of Moravian military. Some are kneeling in the front, some are standing behind them, but they're all sort of gathered around one of these huge anti-tank rifles. You've seen these things in the battlefield.
Sure.
They're like, they're practically like 7 feet long. They fire these huge tank piercer shells, all that kind of thing. But they'll each put one hand on it so that they're holding it up between them. And one of the women standing just off to the side. It's hard to make out, but her posture and the attitude and the little smirk on her face look so much like Marta that you can't quite shake that feeling. And you're not sure, because you haven't seen that smirk from her in a long time. And so you can't help but wonder, why now? Why is she smirking now?
I suppose, or I hope, I get to ask her that myself, but who knows? Maybe she knows that it's over. Maybe she knows who the Rocket Man is. Who knows? I'm sure we'll have time to talk about this.
All right. So now we've entered into the epilogue phase.
Yes.
So we need to work out a few things. What happens to Moravia? What is the general mood of the country, and what does that mean? What happens to all the people who matter to you? How do they respond to what the war has been? What's the epilogue of their story? And then we'll finally need to decide, what does Klaus want? Does he want the machine, or does he want his humanity back? So tell me what you're going to do with that injector. I want to see if we can play that out first.
I actually might ask that we do that last.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's going to tie in direct. That's going to bridge together what happens to one of the people that matters, and also whether the decision that Klaus makes is dependent on what he does with that injector.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's first decide what becomes of Moravia as a total. So, the anger level of Moravia has been sitting at a 4. The despair level has been sitting at a 1. So I want you to roll 4 dice.
All right.
And let's see what our high number is from all that.
1, 5, and 3.
All
5.
Right. 5. So the anger gets itself a 5. Now, I want you to roll 1 die.
All right.
For the despair.
2.
2. All right. So 2, despair remains low, but anger remains high. The difference there is pretty profound. There's a 3 difference between the two of them. So what that means is that Moravia stays angry. People aren't willing to let bygones be bygones for a while. The military actions end, but the leadership of Hansa and Asturia are basically put under control of Moravia. The two of them become client states. It's not quite sure how long that's going to last. Is that a permanent fixture? Is it not? Moravia does not make a military conquest of their surrounding countries. At least it's not that bad. And, if it was like a 1 to 6, if it was like a difference of 5, then they wouldn't have stopped there.
Right.
Moravia would have said, okay, well, now the rest of the world is ours too.
Yeah.
We've got the Rocket Man. But with this balance of power being where it is, things stay aggressive. Things stay, Moravia first in the minds of people, where they think that, well, look, these countries acted against us. It's only right that they become client states to Moravia for the foreseeable future. And so that is how the nation, continues, or rather, that's how the nation begins its peacetime.
Okay.
Now we need to figure out where the rest of where your connections fall into all of that. So the greater mood of Moravia is, still
tense.
Still tense. It's angry, basically. We've got that anger number there of 5. That's what our ending anger level is. Which is basically a challenge to these people that you've bonded with. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through them, and we're going to, roll dice against the difficulty 5 to see how they deal with this. Do they knuckle under? They became part of this mood? Do they retain themselves? How deeply are they affected by what Morovia has become at the end of this war?
Okay.
So who would you like to check on first? You've got Dumont there.
Let's check on Dumont first.
Okay.
I want to see what happens to Paul after the war. I've got 1 dice. I assume I'm rolling with the relationship.
Yes. You roll with the bond, so it's 1 die.
So I've got 1 die on Dumont. We're going to roll 5.
Okay. Well, you've matched that difficulty there. Which, what did you want from Dumont, actually, in this case? I'm kind of curious.
To respectively fuck off. I think that if he matches, I think what it is it's still an angry world. It's still an angry Morovia, so he probably doesn't let up. He probably keeps up. The Citizens Council hangs around.
Yeah.
The meetings hang up, but he is quietly and without circumstance functionally stripped of power.
Okay.
Law enforcement returns to what it was.
Right.
Everybody comes back, and as much as he trumpets and as much as he screams, he is just a loud voice screaming at town hall meetings.
Okay. Yes. So Dumont stays Dumont, but that doesn't mean nearly as much as it once did.
Yes, exactly. There are no lynchings come to...
Yeah.
No hanging, no public executions come to Morovia.
Right. Shall we find out what becomes of Jean and Maria?
Yes, I would love that.
All right.
We got 2, a 4, and a 3.
Okay. 4, which does not beat the 5. So, this one's a little rougher.
Yep.
Jean is effectively forced to stay on the run. People are angry. They're angry at black marketeers. They're angry at people who profited off the war. And no matter how many people, we try to convince otherwise, people still see this guy had fresh coffee and we didn't. This guy had access to all of this medical supplies. And how did he get it? Well, an awful lot of wine went missing while he was working at this place. Stuff rations that could have belonged to other people. So Jean is forced to stay underground for a time, meaning Maria stays with Hannah and you. She is basically kept away from her father, knowing that if he comes to see her, if he's caught, he'll be killed. And so Jean has to stay that way. Occasionally, you'll get a postcard, a letter, a message, something like that from him. Always hoping that things will quiet down, calm down. Maybe forgiveness will come back to Morovia and he'll be allowed to return. But it seems that that's still a long ways off. Maria tries to deal with it as best she can, but she's just a kid.
It's a rough scene.
Yep. Plenty of times when she's sort of overwhelmed by it, and that those lead to bad days with her coughing fits. But there are good days too. It's really just because you and Hannah are there for her that she can keep going through this trial that doesn't really end for her.
Sure.
All right, now we need to find out what becomes of Hannah and Marta. Yeah, how do they do with this?
I'm going to roll these one at a time because these are very important to me.
They're important.
Okay, we got a 5. We matched.
We got the match.
2 5s.
2 5s. There's a 6. Yep.
And 1. So we got 2 5s. We got a 6, which means they did win. They won, and that's really there's a palpable.
Yes. Hannah and Marta basically get to sort of still be themselves through this. They're not really changed in this. Marta does come home after the end of her service, relatively normal. Like there are other people who come back and there's a lot of trouble with you hear about her friends in the unit that she keeps talking to over this these improved transistor communications, just trying to stay in touch with people who are having a rough time of trying to get back to just being ordinary citizens. Marta seems to have come through it well. She's a veteran now. She respects and understands that. But it's not it doesn't weigh on her nearly so heavily as it seems to affect these other people. That sort of wicked smile is back. Every chance she gets to call you old man, it's punctuated by that same little grin that you didn't really see when she was back on leave. One day, a little bit after, she does come to you and ask, "So I have the option to sign back up to go career, and I've been wondering what you thought of that."
I think I know when I had the option, I took it. And I took it partially because it was peacetime. It was easy. It was a steady job with benefits that would go on long after I retired. It was good. Unfortunately, I don't know that you're entering into the same world. I don't know that Morovia is the same Morovia that I enlisted into.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably be stationed in Hansa, I think, with the occupation forces. But I mean, I don't know. My CO is willing to vouch for me. They say that I made a good showing of it during the war. And I mean, it would, of course, get me out of the way so you and Mom could spend more time together, I guess. But if you think that it would be, unsafe or just a bad scene, then...
Do you remember the talk we had?
About when I couldn't pull the trigger?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have thought about that every single night, every single day. And it's corny to say because I'm dating your mom and I don't want to make it, I don't want to sound like, I don't want to make it a thing, but I see a lot of myself in you, kid, and I know that part of you is, there's a voice in your head saying, it's the thing to do for Morovia and for glory and for all these ideals, but I think maybe there's another voice a level lower that is the voice of what you really want to do. And I can't tell you one way or another whether you should enlist or whether you should drop out. But I know there's a little voice in the back of my head. And the times that I listened to that voice, there was one time I listened to that voice and it changed everything for me. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. But I listened to it once, and it was a decision that I would never, ever, ever change. And so I want you to do that for me. Just listen to the voice in the back of your mind, and it'll guide you true. Whether that means Hansa or whether that means Idle, that voice will guide you where you need, maybe it's not where you want to be, but it's where you need to be.
Thanks.
I think you got this, kid.
Thanks. So, Hana.
Yes. So, Hana, gets a communication.
Mm-hmm.
It's a telegram on official military letterhead. It's a little unusual. It's signed off by Delaney. That's like, meet us here at this time, wear your finest. And it's like, oh, I'm going to a military luncheon. That's so exciting. And I'm like, oh, I've got business to take care of. I'll meet you there. And there's a convoy pulls up. And, or not a convoy, but like a car pulls up.
Yeah.
And it takes her past town hall, past the bingo halls where events are held. Mm-hmm. And it takes her to the junkyard. And she's very confused.
Yes. Certainly.
And they open the door and she's like, this is a scrap yard? Is this the wrong spot? And
no, ma'am, this is the place.
She looks around and there's a clearing, and she gets the briefest glimpse of a figure in the clearing before she sees a tiny flash of red as a button is pressed, and then a cloud of smoke and metal surrounds, and when it clears, for the first time, I'm not the Rocket Man. For the first time, it clears, and it is Klaus in maybe like a chromified version, but it is him in his military finest. And he walks over, and he extends a hand to Hannah, and like one of the military little bit reluctantly turns up the volume on the radio, and some dance music starts playing. And he takes her and he kind of holds her close, and they begin to float, just barely off the ground. And he kind of leans in and he says, "Hannah, I have two things I need to say to you right now."
I suppose you do.
One, I have been keeping a secret from you the entire time I've been an idol, and for that I will never fully forgive myself. I understand the scope of what was kept from you is unforgivable in its own way, and if your response to point number 2 is anger and a rebuff, I understand. And we're like actively dancing on air now, twirling around. Hannah, point number 2 is I have loved you from the moment that I first laid eyes on you. I understand for everything that we've been through, you have been the thing that has kept you've kept my feet on the floor. And he looks down and laughs as they're not, very much not on the floor. You've kept my feet on the ground, and there is nothing I want more than to be here with you forever. And they land, and he drops down on one knee and unearths, just as I think the chrome starts to fade, and it begins to mist off.
Yeah.
And he pops the ring. Hannah, I love you. Will you marry me?
You found the most amazing, over-the-top way to ask that question. I almost feel foolish saying yes, because who says no to that? But yes. Even without the song and dance and all of your strange special effects. Yes, of course.
I'm so glad. I suppose I have a third thing to ask you.
What's that?
And I explain. There's time to talk in the car. We know this doesn't.
Oh yeah.
And on the car back, I explain.
They get you dressed back up and send the two of you on your way.
I explain Project Wingspan, and I explain the Rocket Man, and I explain everything that Delaney said, and we pull up, and we walk in, and we sit, and there are croissants, and Maria's there, and I sit, and I ask her, so, what do I do?
Well, I overheard you talking to Marta a little while ago about a little voice inside that should guide you, I suppose. I mean, it sounds like you'd have to give some things up. I mean, you say it's because of this machine that you don't have your limp anymore, that you're able to, that your mind stays so sharp and so on. I mean, far be it from me to turn you into a mere mortal, but, I mean, do you get older? Do the rest of us just fade away if you go on being the machine?
And there's my answer. Thank you, Marta. You've always, you know.
Of course.
And he walks off, and he sits in the car, and he says, "Take me to Delaney.
Okay.
I know my decision."
All right. They have to drive you down to the capital for that, so of course they put you on a helicopter partway through. where, of course, everything is festooned with huge Moravian flags and all that sort of thing. There's still quiet victory celebrations going on around town, and there's a lot of talk and chatter. There are all sorts of visiting dignitaries from other countries that are really hoping to get on the good side of the victorious nation, and also see if they can work their way into getting a slice out of Asturia or Hansa while they're here. The military command center, laboratories are where you're sent, where you see a lot of old, semi-familiar faces from back in the days when they were, continuously jabbing you with needles and making you drink strange things, and pointedly not telling you what was going on as you tossed and turned in the middle of the night. So the process, as far as deactivating and removing the machine from you, is experimental. About as experimental as the rest of it, I'm afraid.
I was going to say, it was experimental to put it in.
Fortunately for you, I suppose, it seems that it is not as deep set or spread. He indicates a chart on the wall that seems to be a scan of your body of some sort. There are these strange little particles spread throughout. He says, so, considering that, it might be easier to remove it. Of course, the first step is sort of determining whether or not it can be removed. So, we'll need to begin with a battery of tests regarding that. He leads you over to they put you into a hospital gown. He leads you over to this huge machine that they sit you down in the middle of it, and then all these weird sort of pulsing lights go on and off. Everyone else leaves the room, and and they shut the doors, and you see they have these like metal shields, and they're looking through visors at you as all this stuff ticks and whirs over. So your machine rating is 4, so I want you to pick up 4 dice.
Okay.
Roll them, and let's see what the high number is. There's a 6.
6.
4, 3, 5, 6.
3, 4, 5, 6.
All right. 6 is the hold that the machine has over you. This is the strength of its desire to stay where it is. If you want to get it out of your body, we're going to need to contend with that 6. Now, first of all, let's see how human you are. How many bond points do you have?
I have 7 bonds.
Go ahead. Let's roll 7 dice.
All right.
Your difficulty number is a 6. So
4, 6, 5, 2.
We've got the 6 that ties it. So the tie gets you your pass there. So that's good. The machine's going to hang on. It's not going to want to let go. I mean, you can sort of feel it as they begin these sort of temporary tests. There's sort of like this pulling against it. They give you one of these injections, and it actually kind of feels like there's someone sort of plucking and picking at your skin for about an hour. And at the same time, there's kind of a buzzing in your head that goes along with it, a headache, a discomfort. And they explain to you that, okay, well, the spread is not that strong, but it is somewhat deeply rooted. There's a chance of a loss of some function as we go through the process of removal. Are you sure you want to continue?
Yes. It's time to be human again.
All right, then. Well, we needed to sign these forms here. He hands over a series of forms for you to sign and all that kind of thing. Basically explaining that they are not liable for any damages that may result, etc., etc.
Etc., etc., etc.
So what we need to do now is we need to find out how intact you emerge from having the machine plucked out of you piece by piece, cell by cell, bit by bit. This is going to go to your talents.
Okay.
Basically, we're going to roll each of your talents against that difficulty of 6.
All right.
You want to, match that 6 or do better in order to keep your talents from taking a hit from this thing refusing to let go. So where do you want to start?
We'll start with charming. We'll go fit and focused.
Good.
5, 4, 3.
Okay. So your charming is going to take some damage.
Yep.
From this. So step your charming down from 3 to 2.
Okay. Ironically, where it started.
Yeah, I mean it. Yeah,
or appropriately where it started.
Appropriately where it started. Yeah. I mean it's gonna do some damage to you on the way out. There's gonna be some scarring. There's gonna be some mild loss of facial flexibility, making it a little harder for you to emote to people. Minor, though. I mean, it's not going to completely ruin your dashing good looks to that degree. But you're going to look a lot more worn and a little more beaten down, and that makes it a little harder to relate to people as well. There's a bit of that buzzing in your head from the machine getting pulled away that has left you feeling a little more ornery than once before. Let's see what it does to your body in general, to your fitness.
Two. 1.
Ooh.
Not great.
Well, those 2s give you a 4.
4 total.
So let's reduce your fitness. I'll only make you take it down by 1. Okay. I'm not going to punish you with 2. In honesty, these numbers don't mean as much at this point. I really was doing it for my edification, but it's largely just about what's the effect. So it does take a toll on you physically to have it removed. Your limp is back, but also you feel just a general exhaustion coming over you. They warn you right away that, okay, well, your immune system has taken a hit from this, so lots of vitamin C and zinc, and stay away from any sick people for a good long while. You'll probably, recuperate relatively quickly.
Understandable.
All right, focus. Let's see what it does.
2, 4, 6.
Good. Your brain is just as sharp as it was.
Sharp as ever.
The machine isn't able to, take anything away from you there. In fact, as the chattering and buzzing and so on dies down after, the procedures, you feel a lot more awake and present, than you felt in a long time, in fact.
It's like I've woken up from a dream.
Yes. So, there's damage and scarring from where the microscopic portions of the machine have basically been siphoned out of your body, but it's not affected your mind at all. You're you're an old man again, but you were before all this. Right. It's not like you were going to go back to some idealized state.
There are worse places to end up.
Yep.
I think.
So it's been a couple of weeks as they've done this procedure, actually. You've been at the Capitol, staying there for a couple weeks, and it's been excruciating. It has been just as punishing as the process of them, combining this thing. And you do note, probably to your chagrin on your way out, that it's not like they're dismantling this office. They're not packing things up. It's still going. So Project Wingspan is not over, even though you're out of it.
Let them find a new Rocket Man, and I think the closing shot is the 2 closing shots is I see that, and that's exactly what I kind of mutter under my breath as it starts to pull away. I'm like, let them find another Rocket Man, and I pull up. They take me, I get on the helicopter. They take me. I get on the car. I pull up in front of Hannah's house, and I limp. I have a cane, and I walk through the door, and my face is a little scarred, and Hannah just runs up and holds me close, and I say, I'm back. And I think that's a wrap.
Woo! That's great. Oh,
Russell,
wonderful.
Thank you so much for this. Project Wingspan has been. Oh. This has been such an absolute treasure. I am so proud of all of these episodes, and I'm so happy that we got to play through this campaign together.
Oh, thank you. I mean, really, it's done a lot to sort of really give me a faith in a design that I have at times really struggled with. So it's been great to be able to play these, to see this story play out, to even just to see how little rules tweaks seem to do so much to really put some drama in things. So it's been wonderful. Just
an absolute delight. I cannot. I'm gonna stop talking now, and I'm gonna let future me get the emotional stuff. But know that this has been a treasure. And for one, not one last time, because you're going to be on the show for other things.
Oh, I hope so.
Where can people find your work online?
Let's see. Well, robotclaw.info is the blog. It is sorely overdue for an update, but now that I am digging in to actually getting this thing written, I will have to say some things about it up there. Twitter is @robotclaw. Haven't been on there for a while. I'm hoping I'll ease myself back on soon. Also, I'm still on Google+, if anyone else is still using that. Russell Collins there. You can also look for my, Robot Claw and my Tears of a Machine group there as well.
Well, thank you so much for coming back on the show and for finishing the story. And I'm going to throw it over to me in the future so that he can wrap up with the show. Take it, future me.
Thanks, past me. And thanks again to Russell for coming on to the show. That was everything I'd hoped it would be and more. Be sure to check out robotclaw.info for more information as Project Wingspan as it approaches, or you can just follow me on Twitter or follow the show. I'll keep you posted. And there it is. After 16 months, 7 episodes, 6 sessions, the end of the most ambitious campaign that we've done on Party of One to date. It's remarkable, and I'm a little emotional about it. So thank you again to Russell. Really, thank you from just the bottom of my heart. These episodes were really great, and they meant a lot to me, and I'm really glad that we got to do them. I'm really glad that we got to tell this amazing story through this amazing game. So thank you. And thank you to you, the listener, for listening to this, and for reaching out to tell me how much you enjoyed the episodes as they were going. It really meant a lot, and it really gave motivation to not just finish the story, but to tell it to the best of our ability. Thank you for taking 11 hours of your time to follow along with the story of this kind, good old man trying to do the best he can in a world that is cruel and uncaring. I'm not going to ramble anymore about this, but know that I'm very emotional, and I'm very grateful that we got to tell this story. There will be a slightly longer Party of One Project Wingspan retrospective on the Patreon in the next couple days. I talk about the behind-the-scenes story of how Project Wingspan came to be, answer some listener questions, share my emotions about it. It's pretty good. You should give that a listen at patreon.com/partyofonepodcast. Also, be sure to follow the show on Twitter at partyofonepod, then like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/partyofonepodcast. If you really enjoyed the show, consider giving us a nice iTunes review, a social media shout-out, or a word-of-mouth recommendation. All of those things help the show find new listeners, which helps us get bigger and do bigger, better, and cooler things. If you'd like to hear more from me, consider checking out All My Fantasy Children, the character creation, storytelling, and world-building podcast powered by your listener prompts, hosted by me and my best friend Aaron Catano-Saez. You can find that at allmyfantasychildren.com. Party of One is produced and edited by Jeff Stormer and Jen Frank. All music for the show comes from the song Infinite Lives by Megaran featuring the D&D Sluggers. If you'd like to inquire about advertising rates coming onto the show, or you just want to share your favorite moments from the Project Wingspan saga, because that just wrapped. That just wrapped. You can reach me at partyofonepodcast@gmail.com. Well, that's all I've got. Until next time, thank you so much for listening. Remember to fight the forces of fascism every single day. Remember that self-love and self-care are radical and defiant acts of resistance. And until we meet again, farewell, Rocket Man.
Never gonna die.